I think it's probably best to start with a quick background on me because I think it's going to be relevant. So I studied engineering at MIT and spent my first 5 years of career as a software engineer across Asia and the US. And back then, cross-border tech meant taking literally the hardware, the server workstation through the customs, which I had to do a product demo in front of SK Telecom. But then I went to business school, switched over to the world of investment, and managed institutional capital centered around technology and emerging markets, emerging countries. And I'll often ask myself when I'm looking at a technology company, one, does this technology work? And relatively speaking, that question was actually easier to answer, because the second question was, does this make money? Does this company make money? And oftentimes there was much harder questions to answer, because you're going to have to analyze the context of that technology and competing technologies, the industry, the competitive reaction of other players, regulatory environment, geopolitics, and so on. But if the answers to both questions were yeses, then you will have a winning formula for multiple years of outperformance from there. And I'm going to address why Ethereum's answer to both are yeses. Everyone's pretty aware that ETH price has been on this consolidation pattern for 4 to 5 years. The price has dipped a little bit, but even then, it's well within that range. And we used to have a saying that the longer the coil, the more explosive the breakouts will be. And hopefully we'll talk about why the breakouts will be on the upside. So one reason will be the Iran war is ending. And the Trump administration cannot afford a prolonged war and wants rather a quick off-ramp. And obviously, there's a oil price that's high because of the supply constraints. And if the oil prices reverse, Ethereum will have a big tailwind, because now we're seeing the highest ever inverse correlation. And obviously, oil prices go up, it has an effect on our core CPI, and CPI goes up, interest rate could go up and have negative implications on all asset prices. And the second is Clarity Act. It is a big deal, and you guys are probably aware of the details, but I want to mention that a lot of businesses are on the sidelines looking to jump on after the Clarity Act passes. But not only the businesses, but a lot of countries are looking to the US for policy direction. As a EM fund manager for over 20 years, I have seen a lot of countries, especially when they lack expertise in certain areas, look to the US for policy direction. The Clarity Act, according to Polymarket, has about 56% chance. And I think it's actually a little bit lower today. But when you talk to the people in DC, this does really seem like understated in terms of the probability. And clearly, the big banks don't want these things to happen. But big banks don't make policies. Our policymakers do, and policymakers are elected by the people. A lot of people want this to be passed. Another point is the current administration is crypto-friendly, and crypto is positive for US dollar policy. Just imagine you are in Argentina, and you just spent last 10 years experiencing 74% per year inflation for 10 years and saw your bank deposits in your currency deflate by 99% in US dollar volume. Or you were in Turkey and you saw the same thing, your bank deposits by 94%. And you guys all know USD stablecoins are mostly owned outside of the US, and you could imagine why that would be the case. But if this continued to happen, the central banks in those countries will be faced with a dilemma. Because in international financial realm, there's this theory called impossible Trinity. Basically, you cannot achieve all three of these objectives. So one is free flow of capital, money going in and out of your country borders. Two, fixed exchange rate, very stable currency. independent monetary policy, basically having that ability to move your interest rates up or down. And you could only do 2 out of 3. And the US, of course, has a floating fixed exchange rate, but have full control over the other 2. So now if you're seeing mass outflow of your own currency, you're going to have to do 2 things. One, either you ban that. So we've seen banning of cryptocurrency activities in other countries like Egypt, or you rush to launch your own stablecoins, which a lot of the countries are gearing up to do. And what does this mean? It means just we're going to see a lot more activity on chain, on cryptocurrencies being launched across the world. And from the US's perspective, US dominance in US dollar and fiat world is going to extend into the digital world, maybe even more so. Fourth, we have a new Fed chair, and Kevin Walsh, and he's pro-crypto as well. And lastly, our demographics here in the US is positive long-term. It's the upper chart is the number of Americans in the 30s and 40s, and how that correlates to the US stock market and risk assets. So if you can deduce that there's still a lot of upside from here. So that's just a current quick picture of what's happening in the ETH market. And let's talk about future of money and future fundamentals, because Elon Musk famously has said that it is mass and energy, compute and energy. And we think that Ethereum is the best implementation of that future. So there are a few drivers of ETH demand going forward. So one clear area is agentic AI and robots. Everybody points to the ChatGPT moment as the moment for AI, but it's not the case. Not to date myself, but when I was in college at MIT in the 90s, we had a building called AI Lab. And that the AI Lab was not established in the 90s, it was not established in the 80s. It was founded in 1970. And even going further back, Marvin Minsky started this artificial intelligence project in 1959. So we had over half a decade, half a century and more of development that has gone on for at a steady pace. But when all the breakout technologies converge into one moment, and we could have an OpenAI type, ChatGPT type moment, and from there we saw a hockey stick type of development and progress. So AI is getting better and better and smarter. AI is interacting with the websites. The robots are becoming more dexterous and being deployed more widely. I don't know if you've heard of Dark Factory out in China by a company called Xiaomi. It's famous for running 24/7 in the dark because the robots are running it with very minimal human oversight. And they claim that they can produce 1 smartphone per second. And also, AI is becoming smarter and superhuman. And if you haven't seen, just recently there was a big mathematical breakthrough. 80-year-old Erdos problem that the humans couldn't solve has had a breakthrough through OpenAI. And not only that, the internet is now increasingly utilized by AI. All content, this is the chart of all the content, is share of all the content that's created on the internet. And AI is not just answering questions, obviously. The agents are executing things for you. They are scheduling your next meeting. They're executing your programs. And also they are transacting on your behalf. And in that world, AI agents are going to need money, according to Mark Andreessen. And in that future, blockchain's advantages are much more pronounced than the traditional rails in areas like authentication, data integrity, and so on and so forth. And second, Wall Street is tokenizing. We hear about this constantly, and here's a big number, $300 trillion of assets to be tokenized and moved on chain. You can see the real estate on the left, fixed income, equities, and go on down the graph here, and then the very far right is the tokenized asset. You can barely see the bar graph there. And as things move on chain, the underlying token market cap also moves along with it. There's a debate whether that relationship should be one-to-one going forward. But regardless, as TVL goes up to multiple $100 trillion, the token market cap is not going to stay at 200 billion. Ethereum as a monetary unit, the system won't use dollars as currency in the future. It'll just be mass and energy, which is compute and energy. And recently, Standard Chartered put out an interesting report, and in there also described what happened to Amazon in the bubble burst of 2001 and how that compares to ETH, the price. If you remember back then, the Amazon stock price went from $113 to $6, but underlying business was still improving. And if you're a smart investor and held onto your stock or invested at the time, you would have made generational type returns since then, because the stock more than 1,000 times folded since then. Ethereum is moving beyond foundation-centric. This is what our executive chairman, Tom Lee, has presented last week. And Vitalik has said it multiple times. The role of EF will change and be more focused and more streamlined, which makes sense because EF's holding of ETH has gone from 17% to now 0.1% at $2,000 per ETH. So it's about $200 million. And if you apply a traditional foundation model of 5% yield, that's roughly about $10 million where you would spend on grant money and helping the ecosystem grow, which is nearly not enough. So when Bitmine started last year, EF was at 0.3%. It is now at 0.1%. But during the last 1 year, Ethereum Treasuries have really increased its holdings. So these are strategic holdings that we don't plan to sell, and altogether we hold about 7%. At 7%, you're yielding about $500 million a year. So this is the summary charts. Pre-2024, the foundation was quasi-corporational, which what I mean is that it has done a lot of activities. So it funded public goods, funded a lot of research that were important. It provided infrastructure. It coordinated ecosystems growth. It protected neutrality, and did a lot of work around bootstrapping the adoption and created the network effects. But as we sit in 2026, the foundation role has evolved and will have to evolve, which makes sense. But we'll have to continue to steward the public goods and long-term research, especially in areas like security and quantum resilience. It will coordinate with private sector efforts. It will develop best practices, represent the ecosystem, and strengthen decentralization. So today, Ethereum's network value is over $200 billion and has a perfect track record of 11 years of running without 1 day of downtime. It has over 11,000 nodes across 89 countries and has over 15,000 developers working on it. It is simply too big to be coordinated by one single entity. But Ethereum, so if you look at other sectors and how they have grown over time, you could look at mobile telecom industry, semis industry, and broadcasting industries. All of these consortiums over the last few decades have evolved in its roles. And for example, mobile telecom has now 1,000 members, and they operate and develop standards. They do certifications and surveys and so on. And semiconductor industry as well. Their roles have evolved into policy advocacy and rule setting. And broadcasters is a great example because in the 80s, in the 1920s, it did a lot of bootstrapping work by itself. But now it has over 8,000 members, and their role is centered around advocacy, lobbying, education, and so on. And Ethereum has to evolve as well. And we already have players like these private companies doing a lot of engagement work for the industry. And we have Treasury companies generating $500 million doing a lot of ecosystem boosting type work, which in turn is beneficial and accretive to our shareholders. So Ethereum is in a good place. EF is going to be stronger by being more focused, and we'll have more players involved in this ecosystem pushing this forward. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about Bitmine. So during this mini crypto winter, we've been doing a lot of building. First, we invested in ACO. We actually increased our investment in ACO just recently. And ACO holds Worldcoin. Worldcoin is Sam Altman's proof of human project. And they have recently attracted some a lot of commercial interests, including Reddit, who's going to adopt the Orb technology, as well as Zoom. And we launched Maven. Maven is the largest single staking operation in the world, not just Ethereum, but across all digital assets. And we are open for business. And we stake about $14 billion, and more than $2 billion of that is our customer digital assets, including Hype and Sol and others. We've also invested in Beast. Many of you guys already know. What they have recently announced was that their revenue for 2025 was nearly $1 billion and grew more than 100% from the prior year. And they're guiding for another 60% plus growth. And of course, MrBeast is the biggest content creator in the world, and they are interested in entering financial services for Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We believe they're well positioned to be the Robinhood of the next generation. We uplisted to New York Stock Exchange Big Board. And just recently, Russell has announced that Bitmine is on the preliminary list to be included on their index on June 26th. And it is actually a very big deal in the investment world because about $4 trillion of assets are benchmarked against Russell, which means about 1,600 investment managers will have to make a decision on whether to invest in Bitmine or not. It's kind of like being on the main menu at a restaurant versus being on the pantry in the back kitchen. So, and Bitmine is the only way for them to express exposure on Ethereum. Lastly, we reached near 4.6%. We made a press release this morning, and we're going to take a slower pace going from here. We'll probably reach 5% sometime in the second half of this year. And so proper debts outperform crypto underlying asset. And last year, we outperformed by quite a bit. And this year, also in the down market, we are outperforming the underlying asset as well. There's a big correlation with ETH price, underlying price. And if our friends at Etherealize is right, and it goes to $250,000, there's a lot of upside in our stock. And with that, I want to close my remarks, and thank you very much.